Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're opening up a very unusual, deeply supernatural cold case file. Think of this as a descent into the absolute darkest corners of human secrecy. I'll be your guide, an investigative scholar, if you will, dusting off the files of history to profile a figure known as the Ash Witness, Caym.
Look, I want you to just imagine walking into a crime scene, but it's one where a massive fire has consumed absolutely everything. The physical evidence is just gone. History itself has gone completely cold. You're standing in the ruins of a collapsed empire, or, maybe just a burned-out study in a classic dark academia murder mystery. You're looking for all those true crime staples, fingerprints, blood spatter, a smoking gun. But instead you get this account. The first bird landed on the blackened beam at dawn. No one in the ruined hall noticed it at first. The king's investigators were busy counting bones, melted coins, and the shapes of banners burned into the marble floor. They wrote their reports in careful ink, pretending the fire had left them facts. I absolutely love this passage. It so perfectly captures that suffocating atmosphere. You have these conventional true crime investigators clinging to melted coins, entirely missing the real witnesses that are literally gathering right above their heads.
So that begs a pretty massive question. Who actually speaks for the ashes? I mean, how do you interview a destroyed crime scene when all the human witnesses are either dead or the ones who survived are just lying through their teeth? In a traditional true crime investigation, a detective relies on alibis. They rely on human psychology. But when you're dealing with a historical catastrophe where the truth was intentionally burned away, human tools just fail. They don't work. You need an entity that bypasses human deception entirely. You need someone or something that listens to the silence, reads the remnants, and frankly, doesn't care about your alibi at all.
Which brings us to our prime suspect, Caym. He's sometimes called Camio. Now, his emblem in the traditional Ars Goetia catalogue marks him as the 53rd spirit, holding the rank of Great President. But for our purposes here, analyzing him as a really compelling figure of dark fantasy world-building and symbolic psychology, he's something much more terrifying than just a standard monster. He is an entity entirely obsessed with hidden speech. If you dig into his mythology, you see this fascinating convergence of bird voice, ash transformation, and brutal disputation. Basically, he is the intelligence that arrives the moment the smoke clears.
Caym's true power lies in his title as the Ash Witness. And it's important to understand he doesn't just casually look at a pile of ashes. He reads them as forensic memory. Ash, symbolically speaking, is what remains after a violent transformation. It's a city after a brutal siege. It's a love letter after censorship. It's a reputation after a public disgrace, or the body of knowledge left over after an ancient library has been torched. Caym is the ultimate witness to what survives destruction. He reads the burned illusions, and honestly, in any mystery setting, that makes him the most dangerous kind of witness you could possibly encounter.
Caym operates in what we can call nature's courtroom. Let's break down how he decodes this evidence. He possesses this profound knowledge of birds, beasts, dogs, and waters. But he's not just out there listening to animal noises like a naturalist. No, he decodes these bizarre natural occurrences into airtight confessions and prophecies. For example, a kingdom might execute a man for treason, but Caym, he listens to the birds singing above the gallows, repeating a completely different hidden confession. He hears guilt in a dog's bark. He hears prophecy in the sound of boiling water. And ultimately, he hears betrayal in the subtle, shifting rhythm of a suspect's own breathing. He basically turns the entire natural environment into a courtroom where literally every single sound is admissible evidence.
Visually and symbolically, Caym possesses two very distinct forms that directly mirror his investigative process. On the left, we have his bird form. He first appears as a thrush, or a blackbird, and in this form he's quiet. He's distant, observant. He's basically a mobile omen, perched up there above the ruins, gathering the hidden speech of nature without interfering at all. But then, on the right, he shifts into human form. And here, all that instinctive knowledge transforms into active, aggressive confrontation. He becomes all about argument, judgment, and verbal combat. He takes those quiet omens he gathered as a bird and absolutely weaponizes them into human language.
Now, When he assumes that human form, he always carries a very specific item, a sharp sword. But to really understand this literary profile, you have to realize that this sword is not a weapon for physical violence. It's entirely metaphorical, yet completely lethal. It represents logic. It represents accusation, rhetoric, and the incredibly sharp edge of truth. It looks less forged in fire than, well, spoken into existence. When Caim wields this sword, he is cutting through lies with flawless, agonizing logic. He's dissecting a suspect's story way before compassion or mercy can ever intervene.
If we were to run through his dossier as if we were criminal profilers, it would look exactly like this. His archetypes: he's the interpreter, the eyewitness, the debater. His strengths are unmatched: translation, prophecy, pattern recognition, and relentless interrogation. But look at his weaknesses. This is really where he becomes a deeply flawed, tragic figure. He suffers from immense pride and an absolute addiction to argument. I mean, he's the kind of guy who will completely ruin a dinner party just to prove you misused a semicolon. He suffers from a chilling emotional coldness and an utter inability to let silence just remain silence. The moral danger here is that his brilliance in translation is matched only by his toxic need to turn truth into a blade and knowledge into humiliation. Which brings us to his psychological core. He has a brilliant but entirely isolated mind. Because he hears the hidden arguments beneath ordinary language, he is deeply impatient. He is watchful, precise, ironic, and intensely provoked by foolish speech. Just imagine being the smartest person in every single room, able to hear the subtle lies in literally every sentence spoken by mortals. It would drive you crazy, right? He uses his perfect logic to relentlessly alienate the human characters around him. He's like the weary scholar or that cynical investigative journalist who just knows way too much. And because he cannot turn off that analytical machinery, he cannot connect with anyone on a human level.
So we really have to ask ourselves, what happens when truth becomes a blade? The ultimate tragedy of his psychological profile is the deep emotional isolation that inevitably follows. He is a demon of argumentative wisdom. Picture a dark academic setting, right? A young diplomat or scholar might invoke Caim's gift to win every debate. They achieve perfect, flawless logic, only to lose every single friendship and alliance they have. Caim embodies the curse of knowing every secret, but completely lacking the compassion to live with them. And honestly, it really reflects our own human nature, doesn't it? How we so often dig relentlessly for truths we simply aren't emotionally prepared to handle.
To truly grasp this insidious danger, it helps to contrast Caim with another entity from the source mythos, the spirit Alloces. Let's look at these two types of danger. Alloces, on the left, is a figure of war and fire. He teaches astronomy and science, sure, but with the terrifying presence of a fiery commander. He is fundamentally destructive and commands through physical force. Caym, on the right, introduces a completely different and arguably more terrifying type of danger: interpretation. Caym is forensic. He is verbal and exposing. He doesn't burn the palace down. Instead, he arrives after the fire, corners you through meaning, and meticulously, mercilessly tells you exactly why the palace burned and who lit the match. This makes his narrative role in a mystery profoundly unnerving. When the battlefield is quiet and the witnesses are all dead, he arrives to read the ashes. He simply does not need survivors to know what happened, because the world itself testifies to him. Think about it. A mortal detective has to rely on the unreliable memories of human beings. Caym bypasses the lying suspects entirely and listens directly to the surviving environment. The rivers speak to him, naming the dead thrown into them. The dogs howl the true names of the assassins. He is the ultimate inescapable investigator. But utilizing his skills triggers what we can call the interpreter's curse. It's a tragic, inevitable cycle. Step 1. A catastrophe occurs, maybe a sudden betrayal or a loved one's death, and silence falls. Step 2. Desperate, the mortal seeks the absolute truth of the ruin and turns to the ash witness. Step 3. Caym, true to his nature, perfectly and coldly translates the hidden voices. But step 4 is the kicker. In doing so, that translation completely destroys the idealized memory the mortal was actually trying to preserve. Caim gives you the exact answer you asked for, proving that sometimes the absolute, unvarnished truth is the absolute worst thing you can uncover. So let's return to that ruined hall from the very beginning of our cold case file, where those arrogant human investigators are mocking the translator. Picture this. Caim rises from the gray dust, holding his narrow sword of rhetoric. The human captain demands to know who he is, and Caim delivers the ultimate chilling mic drop. He smiles as if the question were already an accusation and says, Caim. And every living thing in this room has been lying except the dead. In just one sentence, he completely invalidates the entire human investigation and claims total authority over the crime scene. Ultimately, profiling Caim reveals the very dangerous intersection of history and spirit. He is the voice that understands every language but cannot escape argument. He is the quiet bird at the ruins, the ultimate forensic mind, completely cursed by the tragedy of knowing every secret but remaining entirely alone in the ashes. It leaves us with a pretty provocative thought as we close this case file today. We all claim we want the truth behind the mysteries of our past. But if the Ash witness were to stand before you right now and offer to perfectly translate the silences in your own life, would you truly want to hear what the Ashes have to say?